All right, Q&A part five. Five. You can see all five of my fingers. This is going to be it. I think I'm going to wrap it up with this one. Scott Terry asks, "Dear Andy, in MK Ultra mythology, the concept of psychological disassociation looms large. A victim undergoes forced psychological shocks until their mind disassociates from reality, leaving them vulnerable to manipulation and control. Right. If there's truth to these stories, could it be that MK Ultra was practicing on the micro level what is now being practiced en masse on the macro level over the entire population?" Yes, I agree. I think it could be. I think it is. I think that is happening. Is pop culture's turn to the hyper-fantastic a sort of disassociation from the realistic horror of life on the slave plantation? Well, I don't know. Is the way you ask that last question makes it sound like escapism is something along the lines of the result of disassociation brought on by these diabolical techniques. So therefore, you know, losing yourself in escapist fare would be which you're talking about. Pop culture's turn to the hyper fantastic. I guess you're talking about people getting into shows or books or what have you that are just that take you away from all this. Is it a sort of disassociation? I think that to a degree you need to disassociate. You need to. I think that's. I don't think there's anything wrong with escaping. If you're living in a grim place and you're surrounded by fears and worries, then it's healthy, I think, to find a way to escape, for your mind to escape, as long as you don't get deluded into thinking that your fantasies are real, and as long as you don't neglect the duties that you have in the real world to your friends and your family and your children, your parents, and everyone else. I think escapism is quite healthy. I think it's why people read Tolkien and C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. And I think those are great books. And I don't think it's unhealthy to disassociate in that kind of way. But I do think that there is a widespread sort, like they're not just it's not just about individuals that they target with for extreme psychological disassociation, but they also, they run what we call psyops now, I think, on the general population. We're all victims to one extent or another of that. Okay. In these goings down, ask, bro, what is your favorite beer or any alcoholic beverage? I think this might let you down, Mr. In these goings down, and I'm sorry to do that, but I'm not a big drinker. I've never been much of a drinker. Now, I could hang out in a bar. I could hang out in a bar with you and maybe have a single beer while you drink the beverage of your choice, and we can talk, and I'd be fine with that. But I'm just not big into alcohol. There is a type of wine called Arbor Mist, which is incredibly cheap, and it's kind of more like soda pop than wine. It's like it's sweet. It actually tastes good. Most alcohol does not taste good. I don't care what anybody says. I don't think wine has a particularly nice taste, and except for like communion wine, Manischewitz, the one that are sweeter tasting. I don't think beer has a really great taste, and I know nobody would say that whiskey tastes good. But I guess it's where it gets you, right? It's what it does to you that people that makes it so popular. Maybe some people actually do drink beer for the taste of it. I don't know. I've never found beer, or maybe wine coolers. but that's such a pussy thing. Like, give me a wine cooler, please. I'd like a wine cooler. I think in these goings down, I think I would probably get beaten up if I went into your bar in Philly and ordered a wine cooler. Be like that scene with Leo DiCaprio in where the guy asks him if he's on his, where he orders grape juice and the guy asks him if he's on his period. I think I'd get someone like that come and bully me. Okay, so Anti-Aristotelian asks, what is the whole relevant life arc that puts you in association with Spencer and Company? Spencer meaning Richard Spencer. Well, in 2008, 2009 or so, in 2009, I finally published my first novel, Considering Suicide, with 9 Banded Books, a small press out of Charleston, West Virginia. The editor is a guy by the name of Chip Smith, and Chip and I were in touch, and we had a pretty good rapport. It took a little while. It took longer than I would have liked for my book finally to get published, because I think he kept putting it off. He was very short-handed, because I think the company, if it still exists, is basically just him. But eventually it finally came out. And I remember him contacting me and saying, Andy, there's this new site called AlternativeRight.com. You should look into that. It's a real scene. There's a scene developing there. And up to this point, for people who were on the right, but who weren't establishment right, people who were on the right but against the war on terror stuff, wanted to be able to talk about things like race or differences between the sexes, and who were really, or who were just traditionalist, and very thoroughgoingly politically incorrect, but also against the against American foreign policy, just the what had been known up to that point as paleoconservatism. There was a lot of that about at the time in the aughts that you soaked up when you could. There was Pat Buchanan, there was Joe Sobran, who was a favorite of mine, and I actually wrote for a site called The Last Ditch, which was affiliated with Sobran.com. They're both published by the same website publisher, but this was a time when print media hadn't totally died yet, when everything wasn't online yet. So there was Chronicles magazine, but it was very very boomerish and very stodgy, and it was kind of annoyingly I don't know how to say it. Sort of cliquish, and just a lot of older men who didn't really, who were just sort of grousing about how things were better before, I don't know, before whatever whatever age. You know, people who never got over Sam Bradford getting rejected by Reagan, which I know he got shafted, but still, you know, this is the sort of, it was all, it was people who were older than me, generally speaking, who I was reading, and who I was tuned into. I guess that the magazine, The American Conservative, came out at around that time, and it was okay, but it was still sort of eh. But there wasn't really something with this, you know, like a scene with a more youthful vibe and a more, I don't know, less stodgy and more connected to popular culture. You know, more like more characterized by an engagement with the you know, popular culture and the things of the world, even if you're, you know, even if you think it's gone off the rails. You know, not so much just this whole tiresome kind of smug, you know, you know, dismissiveness and elitism of like 60 and 70-year-old men, but you know, something that had some more vitality to it. And AlternativeRight.com, the site, when it started in, I think, 2010, it had that vibe. There was a scene going on there, and Chip, like I said, drew my attention to it and said, "Well, why don't you look into writing for them?" You know, and he suggested that I write a cover letter. So I did. I wrote a cover letter to Richard Spencer, and I got no reply. He just completely ignored it. But then I remember writing a piece about M. Night Shyamalan, and how, you know, in his movies up to that point, you know, he had seemed, generally speaking, to be, even though he's a non-white director, he seemed like somebody who had a real respect for white aesthetics, if you will. And so I wrote the first piece, which I heard back almost immediately from Richard about it, and he titled it "Hollywood's Last White Nationalist." And so that was the first piece that I ever had published at Alternative Right. And up to that point, I had just written mostly for The Last Ditch, and I'd gotten a couple things published here or there, but that was really, it felt like a real entree into, you know, and I think it was. I think that was the first time that I got more of an audience, and it was exciting, and it was fun to be plugged into a community. You know, even if some of the community was deeply critical of me, and some of them hated my guts, you know, it still felt like I was a part of something that was actually, where there was actually stuff ideas were percolating, and so that was how it started, and I continued to just write up pieces for AlternativeRight.com, and Richard kept publishing them for the most part. I remember there was one that he didn't publish when I wrote about Dr. Laura Schlesinger. It was a positive article about her, and I guess he didn't really like her. But I ended up getting that one published at Talkie Mag. So yeah, so that was how it started, and it all kind of developed from there. which of your profit potential asks which of your articles and books are your favorites and why. My favorite book, I think I've said before, is Under the Nile. And the only the thing I would say about that is it's a book that I feel like really quite well captures the state of mind of a particular type of man. And I don't know. I liked where it went. You know, it was a more it was what I wrote just after the Columbine Pilgrim. Which, if I've written any book that's come close to being well known, it's the Columbine Pilgrim. I mean, that's probably the one that sold the most. But Under the Nile is spelled Nihil. That's the article that's the book that I'm proudest of writing at this point. I don't know if it's necessarily the best, but it's the one that I think I don't know, I feel the best about writing. And as far as articles go, I think I feel pretty good about the articles I wrote in 2020 that I published under the title of my Scamdemic compilation, and because I think those were important articles to write, and it was a time of real crisis where something needed to be said, and I said what I thought needed to be said, and I'm proud of having written what I wrote, because I don't know how many other people during that time, you know, from the start, you know, I don't toot my own horn that much, but I will on this point. I don't know how many people besides me, there were a few others, but who right from the start, right from March of 2020 onward, was saying, this I smell a rat. This is just nonsense. So I would say those are the ones that I'm quite proud of. I've written quite a few articles, so I don't know. There's probably some others that if I looked back on, I would say I'm also fond of this or that one. But those are the ones that stand out to me right now. Okay, just a few more. Coming down the home stretch here. Is it better for most men to get married and eventually divorced, or to stay single? This is profit potential again. Also, are you glad that you got married despite it not working out? Okay, first question, is it better for most men to get married and eventually divorced, or to stay single? I don't think I can answer that in any definitive way. You know, divorce is a tragic thing, always, but not all. No two divorces are alike. You can divorce under amicable terms, as I have, or it can be just this nightmare, as it has been for many other men and some women, to be fair. So I don't know. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule for your first question. I don't know, like, is it better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all? It's sort of similar to that question. I don't know. Second question, are you glad that you got married despite it not working out? Yes, absolutely. Or do you wish you had stayed single aside from the kids which resulted from your marriage? No, I'm not. I don't regret marrying, and I definitely don't regret having my kids. Not at all. They're both supreme blessings in my life. Okay, profit potential. I apologize if my questions have repeated. Can't remember what I've asked in the past. It's okay. No problem. Um, Trad, okay, two more. Trad 1571 asks, "What are your thoughts on Charles Dickens? Do you like his style more, or Russian authors like Dostoevsky? Do you have a favorite poet?" Um, I haven't read as much Dickens as I would like, but I respect the hell out of the guy. You know, he knew what he was doing. Um, it's interesting you asked me to compare him to Dostoevsky. I think there's some similarities between those two, even though Dostoevsky kind of has this more, you know, like alcoholic Russian versus, I don't know, sober-minded uh, Englishman. Um, but they both wrote long books. They both wrote serialized in the serialized format. They both popularized the serialized format. You know, they both wrote very involved stories with lots of different characters. Um, I mean, I definitely would be more of a Dostoevsky person, but I give Dickens his due as well. Do I have a favorite poet? Poets, I would say I would list T.S. Eliot, Gerard Manley Hopkins, maybe John Keats, and Shakespeare. You know, whoever he was, whether he was really Shakespeare or somebody else writing under the alias of Shakespeare. Those would be my favorite poets. And finally, Trad 1571 asks, "Have you done much traveling in Europe? Where would you like to go next?" I've been to most places in Europe, but it's been a while. Um, like I was in Spain in 2014, Barcelona, Spain, and then in 2016 I was in the UK, mostly in Bristol and a little bit in London. But I haven't been back since then. Where would I like to go next? I would like to visit the homeland of Poland. I'd like to see. Uh, I mean, when people ask me about traveling, you know, I really would like to. I'd love to travel just about anywhere. Really, I'm very curious to see the world. Um, I mean, and I've seen a good deal of the world, I guess, compared to some people, but um, but yeah, the as far as where I like to go next, the answer I would have is not a European country. It's Japan. If you asked me, if you told me you can go anywhere in the world, I'll and we'll pay for your trip. You know, you get to go for a week anywhere, all expenses paid. Japan, just because I'm fascinated with them, fascinated with the culture, love it. All right, so that wraps up the Q&A. Thanks to everybody for your questions. Hope everybody has appreciated or has gotten something out of my answers, and I'll talk to y'all soon.